We're back to our practical theology Bible hour. We kind of alternate between systematic theology, the basic truths, principles we need to know, and practical theology, how they relate to each other. Now, I've entitled this one, Worship God, Love People, Use Things. I learned this little phrase from a missionary, but there's some great wisdom to this phrase, and I want to illustrate to us what happens when we get this messed up. And then we'll confirm about why is this actually a profoundly biblical way of thinking about life. Remember, when we talk about practical theology, we're not just taking one doctrine and seeing how it applies to our lives. We're looking at all the doctrines and seeing how they all contribute to our thinking in a particular area of life. And so could be a bit of a life motto, obviously. We worship God, we love people, we use things, and we don't mess those three statements up. But let's work through a little bit how we tend to mess it up. And I think it will be very helpful in analyzing your own life. You might not be happy with your life in many ways. You might be very happy with it in other ways. But you don't always have a grid by which to do some self-examination. And I find this grid quite helpful. It's literally a grid. So let's give you a grid. This is Christian living. Okay, you've got the X's and the right blocks there. We worship God, not people or things. Now God is taken. Okay, so we still love God, obviously. But worship God is taken. When we come to people, we don't worship them, and we certainly don't use them either. We love them. Second commandment, right? Love God, love your neighbor. And then when it comes to our physical possessions, our stuff, our earthly things, we don't love them. We don't love the things of the world that the Bible warns against. It's disastrous for your faith. It will make you walk away from Christ altogether, deny Him, accuse Him of being false. We don't worship our things, or love our things. We certainly don't worship our things. We don't live for stuff. We use our things. In fact, we use our things to love people, and we use our things to worship God. And so it's a great little triage of priorities at a kind of very high level. It's not a very detailed list, but incredibly helpful. And this is ordinary Christian living. Why do you come to church? I get promises of wealth and success. Well, now you're using God because you worship things. Okay, why do you come to church? Because I worship God, and we worship Him with all the saints. You don't come to church primarily to be built up in the faith. That's a wonderful secondary blessing. We come primarily because we worship God. We as Christians, in our ordinary routine of life, are set on loving other people. We are kind to others, not malicious. We don't judge them and their motives and their actions and everything they do. We overlook a lot of sin. And we counsel them when we see there's obvious wrong. And we come alongside them when we seek their best interests. And then when it comes to our things, we look at earthly things, and I think this church stands as a pinnacle of a testimony to this and the property fundraising thing. We apparently are very good at using things for worshiping God and loving other people. Because we believe that if we have a building, our worship of God can develop and grow, and our love for other people can be expanded through the use of a building. Otherwise, we wouldn't care for a building. We can worship God anywhere, but we realize how we worship Him in ministry is if He gives us lots to do, we have to do it. The building helps for that. And so we used our things. We used 2.3 was the price. 2.3 million things for our worship of God and our love for other people. And in ordinary life, you do that, right? You use your business that you built up. It's earthly, okay? It's going to burn one day when judgment comes. But you use it to employ people and to be nice to others and to help others and things like that. I've always thought of farmers. Farmers don't farm because farming is good and profitable, because it isn't. They farm because part of what's built into every farmer is we're feeding a nation. Okay, it's part and parcel of it. It's a motivation. And as Christians, we have that motivation. It's the second commandment. So this is wonderful. Okay, this is what we should do. We'll look at verses for this in just a moment. But then you get the religious materialist. He's very religious, but he's actually focused on the stuff. So he claims to worship God. You can see it kind of changed to a question mark in the grid, because it's not technically true anymore. But he claims to worship God. But actually, he loves things, and he'll even use people to accumulate more things in my worship of God. Okay, this is the religious materialism. There's that hat tip to daily devotions in the morning, Sunday service, maybe, certainly not Bible hours, so you're not here necessarily. But you're actually just focused on the promotion, the bigger paycheck, the sports, the entertainment, whatever it is. And hopefully you didn't get married, but if you got married, you are probably seeing your spouse as someone who can contribute to those materialistic things. Very messed up, obviously. This is the one who goes to church and is more concerned about the temperature in the room and the color of the carpet than about being a blessing to others and sharing in their trials. Another way, though, to get it mixed up, we'll go through all the permutations here, is the religious people-pleasing people. They're not so earthly and carnal that they focus on stuff. They worship people. It's all about people. It's not just a love, it's an obsession. I want people to be happy with me, or the equivalent of people-pleasing, the negative equivalent is man-fearing. Okay, always fearing what a human is thinking of you. They claim to love God. That's certainly there. It's not that they hate God, they're against God, or anything like that. But they really care about what people think about them, or they really care about being friends with the right people. Okay, this is the social media Christian. They post a picture of themselves on how amazing they look in their Sunday outfit, and then they say, to God all the glory. It just makes no sense. Okay, if you want to bring God the glory, then put the verse that compelled you to dress modestly. Don't show the modest clothing and its stunning beauty, and then hashtag Sola Deo Gloria. Okay, it's the religious people pleasers. They come to church because outside church there's a banner, a hashtag church name that you're going to take a picture at and post on social media. Or you come to church because some important people in our city come to church. And we want to be in that crowd. And it makes us feel good about ourselves, just to be around people. I don't want to be alone on a Sunday. They actually worship people in a man-fearing way or a people-pleasing way. And they'll use their things well, okay? We use our money to get to church. We use our money to dress up nice for church because we love God and we want to present ourselves well, but it's actually all about people. Then you have what I call the religiously greedy. They still claim to love God. They're certainly church people. They're not non-religious. But they're not obsessed with pleasing people or fearing people. They're obsessed with stuff. Okay? These are the followers in the prosperity gospel. Okay, not the leaders, they're worse. But the followers. We love God. We love singing. We came when we heard the music. And we'll gather together and everything, but actually the more people we get together, the more likely it is that I will be blessed by God. Because the preacher last Sunday said, if you bring 10 friends to church, then God will bless you in success and in your marriage and in fertility and in your business and in peace at home. And so you're actually using people and the worship service because you have your heart set on certain success that you think will come to you if you do that. You'll use church people even to grow your kingdom. Here's a very, very obvious example of it. You come to church with business cards or product advertisements. Somebody asked me once, it's like, hey, can I use the church announcement group, WhatsApp group, to promote my business because I'm a Christian and it's nice to keep business between Christians. I'm like, I love that idea, okay? Some of the businessmen here are part of groups of Christian businessmen, and they, in a business sense, kind of scratch each other's back, as it were. But we're not using our church announcement group. There's nothing profoundly spiritual about our announcement group, but we're not using it for that. Okay, start your own group somewhere, saying churches like LHBC, business group. These are, as kind of the most obvious external example to us would be the followers of the prosperity gospel. They come to church, they love God, they pray, but they're actually just using the collection of the believers to hopefully get a better life. Then you get what we can call the celebrity worship. Okay? They're obsessed about people. They love dropping names of important people, things like that. We're a MacArthur church, right? And a Paul Washer church. And we like R.C. Sproul's teaching. Those are, right, our three celebrities, right? You drop those names. And I go to a church where this guy is the pastor. And you see things on social media, things like we honor our pastor and we esteem him very highly. And they have entire posts dedicated to that throughout the year. It's bizarre, it's weird, it's the celebrity worship thing. And they look at their stuff that they have, and they really like their stuff, okay? Because with celebrity worship comes, I want the lifestyle that those celebrities have. Have you noticed in this kind of category where people obsess about other people, that they never obsess about the poor and struggling? Okay, I was talking to somebody just about Johnny X and Tada earlier. Just the testimony of she's a hero to us because of her extreme physical suffering. And then in a recent interview that David watched, just that giving praise to God through it all. Like, where do you find people obsessing about her? No, they obsess about those who are successful because they love their stuff. And they'll use God for it. It's this approach to religion that says, let's start a church because then we can make a name for ourselves and then we can have nice stuff. Okay, it's all about the name for ourselves, and nice stuff are certainly a second thing there. But we have programs, not to let people know the gospel, it's programs to create a movement. And it's disastrous. It's running programs and schemes all the time to increase this and increase that so we can have a bigger church. Why do we need a bigger church? Because it's God's work. A little bit of is tagged on. You're just using God for that. Yes? These might be the people who say, don't question or touch God's anointed. Yes. Exactly that. Okay, this is the group of touch not the Lord's anointed. And with that, they refer to themselves, not Christ. And then you get the worldly exploitation group. Okay, this is the leaders of the prosperity gospel. Not the ones who are just focused about themselves and what they want to make of themselves. It's just flat out greed and exploitation of God's people. They started a church because they want to get rich. And it's one of the easiest ways in which you can get a lot of cash in and not tell SARS about it. Literally. Okay? Everything is a means to an earthly end. You need to sow your 20 rands because you want success, is what they preach. The followers obviously get sucked into that. But it's the teacher himself who is the master of that greed. Religion is a means to add riches in suffering, produce health, improve your marital status, your friendship circles, your social media presentation, increase your community and political standing. Okay, you see it on WhatsApp, and if you're in a community group, we're in our community group, and you scroll through the numbers that you don't have in your contact book. So whatever name they put there is what appears, right? And then it's like prophet so-and-so. I'm like, yo, that's quite something. He fights a lot, by the way, in the chatter group. But you are so obsessed with using religion and the people who are part of religion to improve your community standing in this case. It's evil, it's obvious. It's the leaders of the prosperity gospel in the most overt way. It's the billionaires with their airplanes that suck mostly the poor dry. In a more ordinary way, it is you coming to church so you can get prayers from others and a feel-good sense so that you can be more successful in life. There's always an ulterior motive with meeting with others. Oh, someone in a church is suffering. Okay, let's not go there. Yes, but he's a rich guy. Okay, let's go there. Okay, let's go pray with him. That kind of thing. Now, I ran through this just quickly, these different options. It doesn't really matter how you phrase them all. But it's all this idea of what do you worship? So an obsession. Okay, love obsession. And then just ordinary love. What do you love and you're going to serve and you're going to commit to? And what do you use in life? And obviously the categories then that we broadly speak of as God is in a category of his own. Then there's people, relationships, beings made in the image of God. And then there's everything else, stuff. Okay? Your pet, your salary, your business, your house, your car, whatever, the paint color on your house, stuff. We have to, as Christians, maintain these things in the right order. And I find this an incredible, helpful rubric to kind of push thoughts through and priorities through. If we go back again to the ordinary Christian living one, I exist primarily, as the Heidelberg Catechism even says, to worship God. It's not about me, it's about God. But there are people around me too. Okay, it's not just me and God in this world. There are people, human beings made in the image of God. That's maybe the best definition for a person, a human being. Somebody made in the image of God. I need to love them. I have an obligation to love them. With this love, we don't mean you're nice and I like to be around you. I mean you're made in the image of God and I have an obligation to be kind to you and nice to you. Okay, love is an action, not a sentiment. And I'm going to love people. And it doesn't matter if the person in front of me is the biggest idiot in the world or the most lovely person ever. I married her, so I'm going to commit to do them good. It's like the Proverbs say, when even an evil man is in a moment of suffering, you will help him. Okay, we understand that. That's what doctors do. Okay, the guy who stabbed the other guy, now both of them are there. You help both of them. Okay, you don't ask which one stabbed first and then help the other one. You love people. You have an obligation to be kind, be it the poor beggar out there who is stealing from everybody and he's still in the image of God and you still have to love him. Okay, Proverbs says that. So we love everyone. And then you look at all your stuff that we often obsess over and we kind of feel really bad if we don't increase their value and quantity. And we look at this stuff and say, actually, that's just a utility. It's just a means to an end. I remember at seminary, our car broke down, and it was $800 to fix it. We had finally, for the first time ever since we were married, saved $1,000, and it was supposed to be used for tuition. We had 3 months to save up for the next semester. So we had $1,000. $800 has to go to a car. Okay, it doesn't help I have tuition money if I can't get to class. So you pay the $800, and you feel terrible about it. You're like, man, really? And then you realize that's what money is for. Okay, I have to go to class. I need tuition money, and I need a car. I have money that has to get paid for both of those. The car is more urgent because otherwise the tuition is irrelevant. So I've got money, let's use it for that. Now, God provided in amazing ways. But we couldn't go around sulking the whole time saying, our money, our money, our money. Okay, we want to worship God, and now we have to spend $800 that we plan to spend another way. Let's obey God in it. And use the money for it. That's what the money is for. I don't know if you realize in your budget, unless you have a savings line, you pretty much spend everything you earn. Okay, to put it bluntly. I don't care how much you spend, you probably spend what you earn. Hopefully a bit less. Because you save a bit. Eventually it's all gone. But ask yourself, what did it get used for? It got used for education, it got used for health, it got used for a lot of petrol money to go to church. It got used for having people over and spending way too much money on coffee. And that's a great use of money. It's a great use of money. My parents used to drive 2 hours. It's 180 kilometers to church, I think it was, something like that. That was a great use of petrol money. Okay, it was a great use of petrol money. I got saved in that church, so it Not that there's cause and effect there, God did that. But still, they're very glad they spent that money on petrol of all things. So, Christian living, simple grid year for us. But let's look at some verses for it quickly. Worship God. So we'll go through it just quickly. It's nothing new to us. Daryl, do you have a Bible open there? Deuteronomy 10, verse 12. Jan, Psalm 76, verse 11. David at the back. Matthew 22, 36 to 40. Hartmut, if you can do Romans 13, verse 8 to 10. Peter, Luke 10, verse 30 to 37. And Sean, you'd love to read this one. We were talking about it just the other day. Luke 16, verse 1 to 13. It's a parable. All right. Is worship God really the top thing? Aren't we getting it wrong? Deuteronomy 10, verse 12.
Now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you? To fear the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul.
Okay, you got to love it in the Bible when it says, okay, let's boil everything down. What's the one thing that God requires of you? And what's first on the list? Fear the Lord your God. Worship. Believe him, obey him. Psalm 76, verse 11.
Make your vows to the Lord your God and perform them. Let all around him bring gifts to him who is to be feared.
Okay, so if you're going to promise something and keep it, make sure it's a promise to God that you're keeping. And let everybody around you come and join you with that. Okay, come, bring your gifts, come celebrate, come worship. We worship God and God alone. When you start with, how am I going to live my life? You first of all say, whatever I do, I worship God. We sometimes treat it as like that first priority, right? I don't actually like that idea at all. That's the priority in all the other priorities. Okay, I'm going to worship God in how I love others. I'm going to worship God in how I use my stuff. I'm going to worship God in how I love my wife. I'm going to worship God in how I go to church. Then we get the concept of love. Now, the first commandment is love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So we know when we talk about people, it's a second commandment. It's not the first one. The first one falls in the worship God category. So Matthew 22, 36 to 40.
Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
Oh, there's so much in there. Okay, so first of all, the distinction between first and second. First is that same thing, love the Lord your God. It's pretty much a quote from Deuteronomy 10. Then it says the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. So obviously, as much as you take care of yourself, now go and be kind to others for a change. And then it says, you can pretty much stop there. We don't even have to go any further. Because on these two commandments, the entire law stands. Okay, it's like a clothes hanger. You have these two commandments that make up this clothes hanger, and everything else in life just hangs on that hanger. But we feel we should add a third thing maybe, not because it's necessary, but because that's typically where we trip up badly. So let's talk about, before we go to things, here's another verse, Romans 13, 8 to 10. Whoever had that? All right, so it's focusing on the human interactions in Romans 13, lots of human relationships. And it basically says, love your neighbor, and everything is summed up in that. And when you look at how it explains love your neighbor, it's pretty much just be nice. Okay? Don't do bad things to others. Okay? Love does no ill to another. owe no man anything except to love them. Like have that obligation of I have to show love to you. Because it's very helpful here. Now we're going to add a third thing. What about his stuff? Okay, those 2 commandments are sufficient for everything. But what about our stuff? We like our stuff. We spend way too much money on our stuff. Our money is stuff. Okay, so what should we do with our earthly possessions? Because that too is a stewardship from God, right? Genesis 1, stay in the garden, cultivate it, work it. Okay, it's just stuff, but you have obligation to God before God with those things. Here are 2 passages from Luke. They're the clearest and most vivid. So let's look what they say. Luke 10, verse 30 to 37. Familiar parable of the Good Samaritan, as it is called. It's all about love your neighbor. So it's that second thing, love people. It has a bit of a religious edge to it because you've got these 2 religious people that are not doing it. And then you get the true believer who doesn't have that religious flair necessarily, but he's a true believer. He's the one who proves to be obeying God. Okay, because the whole discussion was, what does it really look like to obey that second commandment? He's like, here's a great example. Doesn't talk about his faith at all. Just says he's a Samaritan. He's not the stereotypical religious person. But you realize he is the one who understands God's law. And yet, when you go through that example, you realize how quickly the Samaritan used his stuff. Okay, that's definitely a significant detail in the parable. He wasn't going to Jerusalem to spend money on random strangers. He was going to Jerusalem either to worship or to do business or who knows what. He's coming from Jericho, so it's not exactly from Samaria, so we're not sure why, that's not said. But something happened that involved a person's suffering. And he looked and said, I want to love this person. How do I love him? I'll need to spend some money. He spent money and then some. It's kind of, he went a bit overboard. That's definitely one of the details there. He's using his stuff in order to love others. Why? It's implied at least, because he worships God. He's a true worshiper. He understands the point of the law. And so you kind of, the worship God is implied. The other 2 are very clearly stated. And the relationship between those 3 are also very, very clear. He used this stuff that God has given him so that he could show more love to other people because he understood the commandment. It's just a parable, it's a made-up character, but that's the implication. And so we even look at a church building and something like that that requires a lot of stuff. And we're going to use our money to buy a building. It's still materialistic. Then we're going to use the building because we think by doing it, we're convinced, we can show a great amount of love to a lot more people. Okay, that's our purpose. And why on earth would a group of 70 Christians want to spend that much money on a building with all its issues then that we're going to have in the years to come? Why on earth would we do that for people we don't even know yet? Because we've got the Great Commission hanging over our shoulders, over our heads, right? God saying, go into the world, make disciples, teach them everything that I've taught you to observe. Teach them everything. We want to do that. Why? Because we worship God. And so you see this priority work out in very obvious practical ways. Now Luke 16 is a much longer parable, so you're going to have to stand big, read clear and loud. It's a fascinating parable. As you go through it, you first wonder, it's like, wait, is this going to be a good story or a bad story? You're not sure if the main character is good or bad, but it makes a fascinating point. Sean and I were talking about it last week. So Luke 16, 1 to 13. Turn there in your Bibles, follow along maybe. Luke 16, verse 1 to 13. Yes, go for it.
He also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn into account of your management, for you can no longer be a manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me in their houses. So summoning his master's debtors, one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth. So when it fails, they may receive you in earthly dwellings. One who is faithful in very little is faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you to true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money.
Like, it's a fascinating parable. This dishonest manager gets fired, but before he hands in his ID card, he goes and makes friends for himself. Super selfish. He just wants to be in a good place, makes friends with everybody at expense to his boss. Okay, so he writes off half their debts everywhere. His boss is the one who bears the loss. And Jesus tells this fictional story to illustrate how shrewd the unbelievers are when it comes to making a better life for themselves using somebody else's resources. And then he turns it around and he says, this unrighteous manager used another man's money to make friends for himself. Sometimes it seems that the sons of light, those who have the truth, so he's referring to the Jews here, it's a bit of a rebuke. You have the truth, you should know better. You don't use what is another's to improve your future. And when he talks about what is another's, you're like, what is he actually talking to? He clarifies, and at the end, you cannot love God and money. He says you should use the world's money, earthly stuff that you have, that belongs to this world. It's temporary, it's earthly, and you should use it to improve your future. How do you improve your future? Well, you serve God. You invested in God's kingdom. And so we're talking about property fundraising, Sean and I, and there was a discussion of, isn't it amazing to think that money that we saved up over the years individually in our various capacities is all going to burn one day, and if it's silver and gold, it will melt, and bronze, okay, so there will be nothing left of it. But if we use it now, and we use it for spiritual purposes, we're going to make the value of that money pass into eternity. Okay, there's no Venter trailer behind a hearse for a reason. You take nothing with you. But if you have nothing to put in that venterwaantjie, even if there was one, because you spent it all on eternal things, then you're going to show up in heaven, and there's going to be a record of earthly money and the stuff it bought in heaven. Guys, the principle that Jesus talks, the treasure principle. Don't lay up treasures here on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. We had that 2 nights ago. Kids are learning that lesson the hard way. Don't do that. But lay up treasures for yourself in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy. Okay, what are those treasures in heaven? It's the fruit of our ministry. Okay, so I grew in godliness and knowledge of God. There are people who are saved because of the way I spent earthly money. Talk about investment. Okay, that's why I shouldn't say hate. I don't like financial advisors for the most part. Because they never actually talk about real investment. It's always just how your money can make more money. I don't want to make more money with my money. Okay, I want to make eternal reward. And so you've got back to this principle, okay? I worship God. For me, it's not an issue of how I use my money. It's an issue of I serve God, I don't serve money. My money doesn't tell me where it should go. Okay? My worship of God and my love for other people tell me where my money should go. Now, money obviously is just the most obvious expression of earthly possessions. You can add to it your time and your entertainment and whatever else you all do. The point is very clear. Be it the Good Samaritan parable, where the point is you use your things to love others because you worship God, or be it the parable of the shrewd manager, where the point is you use your earthly wealth for eternal friendships. This is the priority. We start with our worship of God. It produces a very practical love for other human beings, obviously ranked in priority with spouse and things like that, and your own family and then everyone else. And then you look at your stuff and say, there's a utility value in my house. My car has a utility value. My money has a utility value. And I can increase my investment substantially by using it to improve my love for other people because I worship God. It simplifies life very much. Okay, we're talking about building projects and stuff now. That's not really the point. All of life helps with this. Okay, how many times have you withheld a small amount of money where you could have done something good to someone and you kind of feel ashamed afterwards? Okay, this would have helped with that. Well, I end our practical theology classes every time with a hymn. This is actually the hymn I ended with our last time we had a practical theology class, but we had a long break since then, and it's still very relevant, so I didn't actually change it because it's still the best one for this. I won't repeat the whole story of the guy who wrote it, but let's just read it together. Oh, that's very small. I'll read it. It's a song you know. Jesus, I my cross have taken, all to leave and follow thee. Destitute, despised, forsaken, thou from hence my all shall be. Perish every fond ambition, all I've sought or hoped or known. Yet how rich is my condition, God and heaven are still mine own. Let the world despise and leave me, they have left my Savior too. Human arts and looks deceive me, thou art not like them, untrue. And while thou shalt smile upon me, God of wisdom, love and might, foes may hate and friends disown me. Show thy face, and all is bright. Go then, earthly fame and treasure, come, disaster, scorn and pain. In thy service, pain is pleasure. With thy favor, loss is gain. I have called thee, Abba, Father. I have set my heart on thee. Storms may howl and clouds may gather. All must work for good to me. Take, my soul, thy full salvation. Rise over sin and fear and care. Joy to find in every station something still to do or bear. Think what spirit dwells within thee. What a Father's smile is thine. What a Savior died to win thee. Child of heaven, should thou repine? Haste then on from grace to glory, armed by faith and winged by prayer. Heaven's eternal days before thee, God's own hand shall guide thee there. Soon shall close thy earthly mission, swift shall pass thy pilgrim days. Hope soon... Excuse me. Hope soon changes to glad fruition, faith to sight, and prayer to praise. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, that is indeed the prayer of our hearts too. We want to worship you, we want to love others, and use our things. Amen.